Hello, I'm Chelsey.
And I'm Sammy, and this is
Deepish.
Hi.
Hi.
Guys, I'm so excited. We have a guest on today's episode, and our guest is Brielle Money. She is the daughter of Michelle Money, who you might know from The Bachelor. Mm-hmm. And she has been through a lot. She is super inspirational. I follow her on Instagram, and I always love seeing her post. I feel like she has such a good perspective on life and just lives a lifestyle that makes you want to live better and be better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she had a severe accident about 5 years ago, and we discussed her overcoming that obstacle in her life, and it's really reshaped and redefined her whole reality. So it was really interesting hearing that. I loved her perspective. Yeah. Even after, I'm like, whoa, I'm so motivated to go out and get what I want.
Yeah, she's super inspiring, and I think we touch on a lot of topics with how her accident is the root to all of the things that she does now. And it's really cool to see how far she's come from where she was and how she's become the author of her own story and the creator of her own reality. And I'm excited to see what she does with her future.
Oh, she's going to go everywhere. I'm so happy. And I know you guys will love this episode.
Yeah, we'll get into it with Brielle Money. So everybody, we have Brielle Money here today. I feel like there's a lot I don't know about you. So we'll get into a little bit of your upbringing and who you are and all of that.
Yeah.
So did you grow up in Utah?
Yep. Born and raised.
Okay.
Parents were divorced when I was pretty little. Dad grew up in Draper. Mom was in Murray area.
Okay. I know you post a lot about your parents. Are you close with both of them?
Yeah. I have like best of all scenarios. My mom is like my best friend. Mm-hmm. My dad is amazing. He's remarried and they have 4 little kids now. So it's been so cool to watch them grow up.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah. And are you close with so like you guys have kind of a blended family? They're your half siblings. Do they feel like your siblings?
Totally. I get texts from them every day. They're like the best.
You're the
They're
big
so
sister.
Cute. Yeah.
Okay. And what high school did you go to?
So I got into my longboarding accident freshman year. So I did first year, freshman year at Corner Canyon. And then I was on and off between that and an online program. So I graduated through Northridge Learning Center.
Okay, cool. And what were you like before the accident? Were you, junior high, freshman year, really social?
Oh, yeah. Total extrovert. I loved hanging out with people. I was life of the party. Definitely a little bit more deeper insecurities. But I feel like that's just high school. Mm-hmm. The goal was Stanford. So
yeah.
I tried my best to do well in school. I was in AP classes, did a lot of extracurriculars.
What did you want to major in at Stanford?
Business.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And why Stanford? Why was that the school?
Yeah, some of my biggest role models had gone there at the time, and I loved their football team. So it's like, I love Stanford.
Yeah.
Yeah, college was the goal, though. It was like, I want to go all in. Education is everything. Mm-hmm. That was the goal.
What about sports? Did you do any sports?
Grew up doing everything. I've always loved sports. Then freshman year, I did softball.
Softball.
It was so fun.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's so fun. Okay, so you grew up, your parents were divorced. Were you 50-50 custody back and forth, or were you one house primarily?
Yeah, 50-50 for a while. And then once I turned 16, I mostly stayed at my mom's.
Okay.
But it was still kind of like I hop back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, just when you felt like it. Yeah. And your mom was on The Bachelor.
She was.
So your mom's Michelle Money,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And the first season she was on, she was kind of controversial. And so did that ever affect you in school growing up? Like, what was that like at the time for you as her daughter?
Yeah, that was tricky. That was Yeah, I really had to learn how to pick and choose my friends and who was in it and who wasn't.
Because how old were you when she went on?
Oh, man. I want to say I was... Because she was on it 3 times. Mm-hmm. Oh, my gosh, how old?
And each time was probably a different experience. Because I feel like now she's very beloved by the community. Yeah, but I feel like eventually we got to see who your mom actually was. Outside of the early 2000s Bachelor, that's very scripted. And so I would imagine, it was probably a very hard time for her the first season. And then probably trickled down to you of like, I don't even know what the show is. I'm young,
Totally. Yeah, it was a weird energy because it wasn't something that we necessarily talked about. Mm-hmm. But I could definitely tell that there was, my mom and I are as close as it gets.
Yeah.
So I could always tell that there was like a shift or that maybe somebody had said something, or, you know, we would go to Target and people would be like, oh, can I get a picture? And then, you know, we'd all get a picture. And it was definitely a different upbringing because people always knew everything. And so there was no really line until I got social media. And then I was like, okay, I can put out what I want to put out. And, you know.
Was your mom like, I don't want you to have social media? Was she strict about that?
My dad was.
Okay.
My dad was pretty strict on, you leave your phone upstairs before you go to bed. You can only have it for an hour a day. No Snapchat for a while, which looking back, I should have listened more.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I feel like it definitely complicates things when you're in the public eye. And of course, that's how a lot of us started hearing about your story, was through your mom. And we'll get into that, obviously. But I remember when your accident happened and she was posting, I love the way she handled it, because she was like, this is her story. Yeah. I'm going to share some things, but like when she wakes up, I'm going to let her share hers. And then me and some people I know, now we follow your journey through your eyes. But I feel like she kind of did that handoff to you very beautifully and handled it really well.
Yeah, no, I mean, my mom did everything the way that she was supposed to. She actually, do you know Marco Polo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
She would send me videos too. So I have like hours of film that nobody's seen.
Oh,
of
wow.
just like what I was like, how I was coping with the medicine, and, you know, my actions and everything. And so she handled it with so much grace and understanding. And you're right, like a definite amount of like, this is her journey.
Yeah.
I'll let her do it.
How do you guys feel like you've been able to maintain such a good relationship? The mother-daughter relationship obviously is very complicated. And especially growing up, I have a lot of friends who have single moms and, you know, throughout her dating, but seeing you two be so close, what do you feel like it is, or things that she's done so those who are raising daughters can have a relationship like your guys's?
Looking at our relationship, we've just been through so much together. And we've done it together and as one. And, you know, she's the first person I go to for advice. And, you know, likewise, like she'll come to me and just be like, how can we walk away from this feeling good with how we handled it? It's been really cool. I feel like we're both always kind of maybe in different directions, but at the same theme of life. So it's been cool. We're both go to the Well Church out in Sandy, Utah, and it's been really cool to talk about faith with her.
Yeah.
As we're both learning more about it, and, you know, everything with the accident. She's just my number one supporter.
Yeah.
She's never been the kind that would get mad when I mess up. And so I always feel comfortable in telling her, like, dude, I did something wrong.
Yeah.
Did you always have that relationship? Growing up, it's pretty common to kind of rebel against your mom at a point.
Yeah.
Like, I hate you, and now you're my best friend when you get older. Do you feel like you ever had that separation from her? Or were you guys always just so close?
We definitely went through our phases. Even just coming out of the accident, I mean, I don't believe I even became myself again until last year. So for the 3 years following the accident, I was alive, but there was no cognitive me.
Yeah.
And so for those 3 years, our relationship was very different.
Yeah. Has kind of that push of her not seeing you thriving or being who you want to be or things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the accident. And I know so much of your story kind of stems from that, because I really do want to get into your faith and your health and fitness and so many things, which I feel like the accident's at the root of.
Yeah.
So why don't you start just from the beginning of that day, what that day was like, and walk us through that story.
Yeah, the whole story is really weird because it's all been told to me. I lost my memory. So a lot of my childhood memory is gone. I think it's those 3 months before the accident just like completely wiped.
Like you don't remember anything.
And so that's really common, obviously, with brain injuries, but it's so weird because you'll have so many people tell you, oh, you were in a longboarding accident. And it's like I was there, but I don't remember it. Like I don't have any memory of it. But no, it was a longboarding accident. To the best of my knowledge, I was going down really some steep area without a helmet on, fell back and cracked my skull. And luckily, we live up in the canyon, and so our neighbors were on a walk, and they saw me and called the ambulance.
Because you were by yourself.
By myself, no helmet.
Did you longboard a lot? Was that something that you did?
I love longboarding. I was always like a sport for me. It was like a time for me.
Yeah.
Put my AirPods in, go on a ride.
Yeah.
Why I went down so steep of a hill, I don't know.
Yeah. Feel invincible,
Yeah,
getting confident at that time.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then cracked my skull. My mom saw our neighbors kneel down beside me, but she thought I had just broke my foot or something. And so she got in her car and she was like, oh no, let's go. And then as she drove down, I was unconscious. And I think I was trying to get back up. So I was like trying to stand up and it just wasn't working. And then the ambulance had arrived and they rushed me to primary children's, and the paramedics were like, if we would have been 1 minute later, she would have died.
Wow.
So it really reaffirmed, like, okay, everything happens for a reason.
Like the timing.
This was not my time.
Yeah.
My time was not now. I am supposed to be alive.
Because they got you and then what? They immediately hook you up to stuff to get you to primary children's or? Okay.
They had treated, because I was bleeding. I think there's actually still blood on the ground of where it happened.
Oh my gosh, it's so traumatic. Holy crap.
Yeah, it was a really crazy experience.
Was your mom immediately there with you, like able to get in the ambulance with you and get to the hospital?
So this is where the story gets a little crazy. The following day was when we went into lockdown. And so
oh my gosh.
I was in a
So this is
coma.
like March 2020.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Really
Wow.
weird time of life.
Yeah.
So I was then obviously taken to primary children's and put into a coma, but I had been in that coma while everybody was inside. And so the laws were different in that I could only see one parent at a time in the hospital. So I couldn't have any guests, which, reflecting back, I'm like, oh, that was actually such a blessing. I would have been so overwhelmed if there were more people there.
Yeah.
And I don't even think my mom could get in the ambulance with me. I think she had to drive separately because of COVID.
Yeah.
Everything that was going on.
So your parents were kind of switching off, being with you and taking turns.
Yep.
So how long were you in the coma for? 10 days.
10 days, and then I was in the hospital for about a month.
Okay. And so that 10 days, what does your mom and dad tell you about that time? Because it was kind of touch and go. I mean, obviously, as a parent, you're terrified
Oh, yeah.
of what this is going to look like. Not only are you going to make it, but what is this going to do to your life? And are you going to be able to walk again and things like that? What were the doctors saying during those 10 days?
They, at the beginning, didn't think I'd make it. And then as I kept, they were monitoring my pressure levels in my brain. So I actually I'm so lucky. I have no scars except for one dent in like my head right here. And it was where I had a bolt in my head that was monitoring the pressure. So we were trying to get those back to normal levels, but they would spike. And it was actually crazy. There was like certain nurses that when they walked in, there was one nurse I didn't like. And whenever she walked in, my levels would raise.
Wait, while you were in the
While
coma?
I was in the coma.
A physical reaction.
Wow. I did not like her.
Um,
Nurses.
But did your mom not like her? Was she really not a good nurse?
I don't remember the story. I had to ask her about it, but yeah, something about her energy apparently I was not vibing with.
Wow, that's crazy. That
Yeah.
it kind of makes you feel like, are you subconsciously there?
Totally. That's what I want to know. I'm like, I don't know.
Are you low key just like standing next to your body?
Yeah.
You know what I
Get
mean?
her out.
Yeah, I do not like her.
What's a well-known thing that people want to know what comas are like? Do you have any experiences where you remember hearing a conversation or remember your mom squeezing your hand or anything like that?
No, I don't. I don't remember the hospital, really, any parts of it. I remember certain moments with therapists as I was regaining consciousness, but part of me is like, is that the video that I've seen or
Totally.
is it the memory?
Yeah.
I don't know. All I know is my first words waking up from the coma were too many people. And so I think
Because who was all there?
I had so many doctors.
So when you woke up from the coma, there were a bunch of people in the room, like, were they taking you off of some medicine that made you wake up? Or was it like how you see in the movies of like, oh my gosh, you're
She's
like,
awake.
She's awake. No, so it was an induced coma. So they just took me off of the meds. And then I woke up and I don't think I was speaking for a while, like fluid sentences. The hard part was learning how to like sit up and, function, like my legs even. I didn't know how to do anything. I had to relearn everything, how to swallow, how to eat, how to talk, how to open my eyes, name it. I had to relearn.
Yeah.
So when you're awake, you're in there for a month. Do you have like memories of this is so frustrating? Like what's happening? Where am I?
Yeah. So the medicine I was on can cause you to be really angry and really like irritable. And so I was so rude to my mom. Like she got the worst of it. Something about her presence, like I was just always, and it wasn't even her presence, it was just the medicine. I need to write her an apology one of these days. But, I mean,
that's the thing is your mom's like your safe place. So it's like that's where you could let that frustration out. That's where the moms just get the brunt of it in any scenario. So I'm sure that she understands.
Yeah, I hope so.
So after that month, where were you at? Like when you were leaving the hospital, were you walking okay? Was your memory slowly coming back?
Yeah, so I was up and walking. It's such a weird, I don't even know how to describe it in words. I just wasn't there. My personality, it wasn't me. It was the drugs. So I was up and I was walking and interacting with people. But it was weird. It's weird to look back and watch the videos because I'm like, who is that? That wasn't me.
But were you aware of it at all? Like, I'm not acting like myself.
It wasn't even there. Like my voice had changed. My capabilities had changed. But I think that first year coming out of the hospital was really hard. That was the part that social media didn't really get to see. I didn't really know how to share it. I wasn't cognitive enough. But it was rough. It was a lot of therapy and learning who I was at the same time while also in high school. And so it was like...
So how old were you?
So this was in 2020. So I would have been 15.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was a really weird just narrative overall because then I had to go back my sophomore year and do all my classes, and I had to retake a lot of classes because I actually got into the accident in March. So I didn't take the final exams for my freshman year. So I had to redo a lot of credits and things. And afterwards, I had developed really severe social anxiety. Yeah. So I couldn't learn while having other people around me. And the lights were irritating. And it was just a tricky balance between being 15 and, just getting out of this longboarding accident.
Well, and that transition, I think it's kind of the same thing with like grief or when a big event happens. Once the dust settles and you're at home and you're still dealing with these effects months and years after and the noise has quieted down, people don't realize like, no, this still affects my everyday life. And I think it's really hard and probably lonely and isolating because a lot of your friends couldn't relate or understand why you can't keep up or why you can't come out or why you can't do those things. How did it affect your relationships? Do you feel like your friendships still stayed intact?
Yeah, no, that was... So coming out of the hospital, I had developed a lot of learning disabilities that I was learning about as I lived life. I wasn't necessarily just like, oh, so now you have OCD, ADHD, and other learning disabilities. And so it was something that I was learning. Yeah, like as I was also learning in school. So yeah, I think friends were hard. It was definitely a lonely time of life because you're right, like nobody, I couldn't relate to anybody.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that that's not like a common triumph that people have to cope with.
Yeah. But it made you mature beyond your years and made you grow up really fast, I'm sure.
Yeah. Looking at my personality before the accident, it was a constant state of victimhood of like everything in life is happening to me. Everything is coming at me and I don't know how to defend it. And I think after that accident, it was the biggest perspective shifter I've had yet in terms of living in abundance. I literally got another shot at life. Like there was no medical reason as to why I should be alive right now.
Yeah.
Let alone walking, let alone talking, let alone have function in my full face. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. So why should I feel like something is coming to hurt me? And I think that perspective has just through and through served me so well. Like looking at challenges as opportunities to grow. Without that longboarding accident, I would be in Stanford, but I don't feel like that's where I'm supposed to be. Yeah. And I wouldn't have the friends that I have anymore. And, I would probably be stuck in that victimhood mentality. Yeah. So, I mean, overall, it was probably the biggest blessing in my life.
So naturally, after a near-death experience, you might have this renowned love for life or gratitude for life or that exact feeling of like, okay, I'm meant to do more, do you feel like that wore off a little bit after a while? Or do you feel like that has always, you know, like when you have a spiritual experience or something, you have to keep that alive a little bit, that spark and that flame alive. Do you feel like that wore off after a while?
I don't think it kicked in until after like 2 years, because for that first year it was tricky because everyone was saying you're such a miracle. Mm-hmm. And you know, the tricky part about brain injuries, you can't see it.
Yeah,
you can't, you know, you don't know what I'm struggling with. Mm-hmm. And I've reframed that now in that like everything I do, I think it just gives me more evidence that I am who I say I am. Like I will do it regardless of. And I think that's such a powerful mindset because it gives you control over how you hold yourself. Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely coming out of it and just being like, I don't even know who I am or what I'm doing, and being told that I'm a miracle is irritating for a minute.
Yeah. And
then after time, I had come to realize, oh no, I am a miracle. Like that was actually really traumatic experience, and I came out alive and leaving an impact.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of pressure probably. Okay, if I am a miracle, like what is God's reason for keeping me here? Like what, I'm supposed to do something amazing. I'm sure that still follows you and probably drives you to this day, but it definitely feels like, okay, wow, we all should have that perspective on life. Like we're meant to be here for a reason, but we lose sight of that.
Yeah, I think there's a level of meaning that it gave me, and you know, it was a little bit tricky because it was so public, and so coming out of the coma, I was then like, oh, like I have to now talk about this.
So did you take on that I'm going to share my journey on social media right away, or did you wait a while? Was that something that helped you?
Yeah, it was more just like my mom would just be like, hey, we need to make a video about this. And I'd be like, okay. And, you know, I still hadn't fully grasped what happened. And honestly, there's a part of me that still hasn't. There's a part of me that's like, I don't remember it. Why should I fully grasp it?
And maybe that is kind of like a blessing of protecting you from having to really sit with that like deep trauma and that knowledge of that time period. But now I'm going to take control, and what can I do? What is in my control, and how do I want to live my life moving forward?
Totally. I think viewing the trial as a way to inspire others. You know, I just got a text from my 4th grade teacher actually, and she was like, my son just got back from school and was telling me about how they just watched a video of a girl that was emphasizing helmet safety. And, you know, right after my accident, there was another little boy in our neighborhood that got hit by a car, but his mom was so protective about helmets because of my story. And the doctors had said if he didn't have a helmet on, he would have died. So there's countless stories like that my mom and I have been lucky enough to hear about. And if that's what the purpose of that accident was, I would do it again.
Yeah. It's hard because it is very easy to slip into the why me, or the like, why did I have to be the example of this? But then realizing how many lives you've touched is really cool. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think it's hard too for you to be like, okay, this story that they're telling me and this thing I'm so well known for now, I don't even remember. So it's maybe a little bit of, I'm not attached to that story, or I didn't experience it, but then you experience the repercussions from it. So it's probably really hard mentally for you. Have you done a lot of therapy since then? Have you worked through a lot of those things, not just physically?
Yeah, totally. Right after my accident, I was lucky enough to get in contact with this therapy out in Provo called Cognitive FX. And they, I believe, completely shaped my recovery. I don't think that without their services, I would have had as seamless of a recovery as I did. Obviously, I was at the University of Utah doing a lot of their therapies as well, and just a lot of reflection at home.
Mm-hmm. So what do you feel like is different about Cognitive FX?
Yeah, so they do a functional MRI. So they'll put you in an MRI machine, and then they'll have this like screen that you look at, and it's like problem solving. And so it activates certain parts of your brain that they're then analyzing and looking at where you're deficient and where you're hyperactive. And then they tailor a epic treatment to what I need. I'm lucky enough to go back and visit with them actually starting tomorrow. So we just did another update on my functional MRI. Unfortunately, it's not that good. So we're still a little bit deficient in some areas, and definitely wasn't what I wanted to see, but I'm hopeful that this therapy again will really help me out.
So do they do all sorts of different therapies with you? Physical, mental, all of the things? Like what kind of treatment, once they analyze your MRI, do they do to help you?
So they usually start off the day with like an aerobic activity. And then, so it's like the assault bike or rower. And then you'll go into these little therapies and you'll switch off every like hour or so. And it's all day for a week. So it's from like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then you'll go in and you'll do stuff on like these boards where it's like the light will flash on and you have to hurry and click the button and then click like, and you have to tracking your speed.
Okay.
I mean, there's a ton of therapies that they do, but a lot of them were also like meditative, like, okay, let's do a reset. Yeah. I mean, the whole treatment, they're extremely talented at what they do. They have people from all over the world coming to visit them, and I'm so lucky to go and visit with them again.
So they're innovative compared to other.
And they're specified on concussions. And so I was diagnosed with a severe traumatic brain injury, which is really just like a step below brain dead. So I was as close to dying as it basically gets. But they also handle depression and, like I said, concussions. So
yeah. And they seem very intentional with it too, which is great. Really tailoring it to the individual and what you've been through. And that's really cool that you found them and that they're in Utah.
I know.
A plus.
They have, I think they only have 3 locations worldwide.
Yeah.
And so you went right after your accident and now you're going back.
Yep. And then we'll probably do another one when I just got off the phone with the doctor, Dr. Fong, Alina Fong. She's amazing. I'll probably do another update when I think she said 23 and 26.
And is it just one session or is it like a treatment plan of, okay, 6 weeks you're coming for this and then in 3 years you come back, or how does that?
So it's usually just very intense for a week and then they'll leave you with these like homework assignments to do afterwards.
Okay. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I would love to have one of those doctors on and really understand the science and technology behind all of that.
Oh,
totally.
I'm sure so much goes into it.
Oh, it's insane. And like you said, they're so innovative in keeping up to date with the newest technologies, and even just going back and revisiting the facility. Their equipment is so much nicer now.
So advanced.
Yeah.
How has that played into your relationship with fitness and health? Does it go hand in hand?
Yeah, this is good. I think that accident really helped me understand how foundational our mindset is. So I initially started out with reading books and getting really deep into them and then actively applying what I learned, which I think is a common misunderstanding about reading. It's like you read it and then you're like, oh, I've read the book, and it's like, but you didn't apply what you're actually learning. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I was really on a mission to do for the following 3 years of that accident. And then I got into fitness.
Okay.
And that's when I started noticing shifts in my body and how I felt and how I carried myself, even just the elevated confidence I felt after taking care of myself.
So you have posted some before and afters of a party phase or things that you've gone through. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I used to do this. Going back to that, I'm curious about that shift. I don't know if that's part of the 2 years where you felt like you didn't really snap back into yourself. That time of life where you go from that not being as centered and purposeful as you are now, what was the shift in you of like, okay, I'm actually going to get super into health and fitness. I'm going to transition into this, change my diet, change my lifestyle.
Yeah, the party stage was intense and short, but it was before my accident. So
it was. Okay.
Part of me is also, I've thought about this a million times. Maybe it was God telling me like, Brielle, shape up.
Yeah.
Like
you have to get stuff done.
I'm pulling you off this track and putting you onto this one. It's going to be hard, but like you can't go down that one.
Totally. I believe that.
And that's a young age to be in that party phase.
Oh yeah. I was like 14 and I was addicted to those vapes and, drinking, and it was all who I was surrounded by. And I think that's where that shift, like you had mentioned, came into play, because it was after my accident, I didn't have anyone to relate to, like you said, and I was forced to be alone. And it was in a time when I felt like so much transformation had to happen, and I didn't have access to obviously the alcohol or the drugs or anything. And so I didn't do it. And instead, I think it was just replacing the habits with then productive ones. So I started off with a Peloton bike and did that every day for like 30 days. My mom's husband had actually done like a challenge with our house. So I was pretty overweight at the time. And he had said that if you do it every day for 45 minutes at least, he would give us a prize. And so it was like a motivation, little challenge in our house. And it was great.
How was your relationship with your body at that time? Before the accident and after the accident? Did you have a good relationship with your body and health before?
Not at all. It was fast food every day. It was staying up late. It was like sneaking food into my room. I don't think I even knew the concept of health at the time before my accident. And then after the accident, it was a different kind of health. It was like science. It was like, okay, I'm listening to Andrew Huberman now, and I'm trying to understand my brain and how to get it back to a functioning level. And then obviously, as I was listening to him, and he was kind of like that voice in my head, I learned more about health and how to prioritize it, and fitness, nutrition, mindset, spirituality, and, you know, just
was
my
he kind of your gateway?
Yeah.
What was it starting? Like a circadian rhythm?
Yeah.
Okay, like I need sunlight when I wake up.
Totally. It was like prioritizing sleep, not drinking caffeine past 12, which I could be better at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. And then I was waking up at 5 a.m., getting my morning sunlight, getting my workout. And I still do a lot of that, but I'm a big believer that there's like themes of life. So sometimes for some people it's health. So it's like go all in on health. So waking up, shortening the gap it takes for me to get to the gym. Right now it's more work. So it's like shortening the time it gets for me to get on my computer. So, but at that time it was like, let's go. Wake up, we go.
Where did this motivation and drive come from? Because it's like, yes, after your accident, you're going to the physical therapist, all that stuff. But this drive for fitness, health, spirituality, where did that fire come?
Yeah, I think that part of me really kicked in last year, 2024, or maybe even like the end of 2023. But I think, and sometimes I can be a little intense, so this might be a little bit off-putting, but
no,
I think
love it.
setting the standard for joy extremely low so that when you feel it, it's enough, really helped me to feel like, okay, when things get hard, one, I was expecting it to be hard, so why am I complaining about it? And then, you know, it's like, okay, anytime I see bikers wave at each other, it's like my favorite thing. Something about it triggers something in me that's like, that's all I needed. I can keep going now. So I think creating, quote unquote, motivation as something that I'm in control of and that's also easily attainable was really helpful in, you know, going pretty hard on a body that didn't want to go hard.
Yeah. And it seems like it's a domino effect where it's like the more effort and work you put into it, it is effort and work, but the easier it becomes to add another thing and add another thing and add another thing. What was your first thing? Was it eating healthy? Was it working out?
I mean, it was when I was like 10 or no, even younger, even I would say like 6. I cut out all sugar. So I would have these little bursts of intensity as I was growing up. But coming out of the accident in that new phase of life, I think it was just the gym every day, no matter my mood. I would go heavy. I was more heavy lifting. So I was on the squat rack and tracking my metrics and how I would work out, really focusing on form. And yeah, that was the first thing that I really took seriously.
And was that for more your mental health, or was it more physical, your relationship with your body? Cutting sugar out when you're 6, that sounds pretty intense. Was that I just want to be healthy, or was it I'm feeling self-conscious about my body and I learned sugar is bad, so I want to cut sugar out?
I think the underlying reason was always that lack of faith in my body, lack in confidence. Like, why can't I wear tube tops? Why can't I do all these things? But another reason was more just to get out. I needed a hobby. I didn't have anything that I could do. I couldn't do softball anymore. I couldn't really relate with my friends and have deeper conversations. It was a place for me to go, and it was me time.
Totally. What's your relationship with food right now?
This has taken me a minute. So I'm on the animal-based diet.
Okay.
But it's really just a diet for myself. I think the nutrition industry is so skewed in saying that one diet fits all. And I couldn't disagree with that any further. But it's just like treating my body as a science experiment. Like when I eat X, how do I feel afterwards? And I've noticed that when I prioritize protein and when I don't do added sugars and when I don't eat past 7 p.m., I just don't eat processed foods or eat out, I feel better with myself. And once I learned to feel the way that I feel now, it would be so hard for me to go back to how I used to feel. So
how do you feel like you found the right diet for you? Was that some trial and error? Okay, now I'm going to cut this out and I'm going to cut this out. Or had you just done a lot of research on the animal-based diet to decide this is what's right for me and my body?
I think that in order to find the diet that works best for you, you have to learn mind-body connection. And that was something that I was forced to develop after the accident. So I was so privileged in that I already had that development of like, okay, my body doesn't want that right now. Even just like looking at it, I could be like, my body does not want to eat that. So it was like an intuitive feeling. It was like, I should try carnivore. So I tried it, and then it was a little bit too extreme for me. I was like, I'm not even getting bowel movements. I need to like add some fiber in. So then I started doing animal-based, and then I was like, this is it.
What's the difference between carnivore and animal-based? I feel like they probably get mixed together a lot.
Yeah, no, they do. Carnivore is very strict. Carnivore is only red meat and salt and pepper. That's it.
Wow.
Animal-based is all animal meat and then like fruits. And they say no vegetables, but I'll do carrots sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you can have raw dairy.
Yeah,
right?
raw
And
dairy.
the honey.
Yeah, I don't do dairy. I can't have dairy. I'm
No.
so bummed about it. I would love to have dairy.
Have you tried raw and it's still just
Doesn't work for me. I just get hormonal acne, so I just cut it out.
Yeah.
So that mind-body connection, can you explain that more and what that looks like for you?
Yeah, I think this originates from my mom telling me to do a body check, which is what she would say. So it's like head or from toes to head, how are you feeling? Check in. Like, does your foot feel okay? Does your knee feel okay? What about your stomach? And getting to that level of like, I can do it instantaneously and notice when something's off. I think just keeping that as a practice was really transformative for me.
Do you feel like that could potentially lead to that victim mentality? Or is it more just what my body needs? Or is it like, oh my gosh, I woke up and I'm so tired and I'm so this?
Yeah. That was when I got really firm on my non-negotiables. So there's certain promises that I'll make to myself that I hold with a different level of commitment. And those I call my non-negotiables. So those are just things that I just do because it's just who I am. Not as much like things that I say I'll do.
So what are some of those non-negotiables?
Yeah. Prayer is top one. Prayer is huge. Working out, just daily movement. And then whenever I get caught in cycles, like I got diagnosed with OCD and ADHD again about 2 weeks ago. And so trying to find ways to navigate that while also hitting my goals has been really tricky. And I've noticed that usually they start with a mental spiral. And so when I find that first point of, okay, I'm noticing something, I pull out my phone and I document only the facts of the situation I'm having problems with. That's a non-negotiable. That's just something I do. So they can be mindset, they can be fitness, they can be nutrition, but you have to do it. You can't say that it's a non-negotiable and then not show up.
Yeah, totally. Do you feel like you learned some of those techniques in therapy, or are these just techniques that you're like, this comes naturally and easy to me and I'm going to do this?
I think it was in developing a relationship with God. It was acknowledging certain thoughts as downloads. That's what my mom and I call them. But we'll just get random thoughts sometimes. We'll be like, oh, wow, that was huge. That could be transformative. I need to apply that. And then we apply it. And then it's like, oh, that's exactly what I needed. I think that's the hard thing about prayer that I really struggled with for a while was I would ask for so much. But then when it was presented, it wasn't in the way that I wanted. And so I would deny it. And I'd be like, no, try again. But that's not how it works.
Yeah. Okay. So what's your relationship with spirituality? Were you ever raised Mormon, or is that part of your spiritual journey at all?
Yeah, I grew up pretty heavy in the church. I was like going to Young Women's and memorizing all the articles of faith and reading my Bible and scripture study and everything. And then seeing my mom during that time of life when she was on The Bachelor, she was, I'd go over to my mom's house and then I'd see her drinking wine. And then I'd go over to my dad's and then it'd be perceived as like a sin. So I was like, but like, how does that, like, it just didn't make sense for me growing up.
Because you were like, no, my mom's not sinning.
Yeah. I was
or
like, my
were
mom's
you...
the best.
Okay. You're so fun and so cool.
Yeah. And I was like, she's not going to hell. Not saying that that's what they were saying, but that it was a sin. And I couldn't fully grasp that concept for a while. And so I started doing my research and came across the CES letter. And that's when I started going heavy into like, oh, okay. It was making me think. It was making me look at sources outside of the church.
And when was this, pre-accident? Or...
Yeah, that was when I was like 11.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was pretty young when I found that.
Do you feel like you've always been ahead of your time?
Yeah,
like,
you sound like so. I'm like,
I cut out sugar at 6, and like I read the CES letter at 11.
I don't know. I think I definitely think age is a weird concept. I think it's more about like experience, but not as much about experience, but how you handle experience. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people that, I know that are in their 40s, and it's like, you've been dealt a hand, but come on.
Mess. Yeah.
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 So 11, you read the CES letter that kind of shook
my world.
So what was that relationship like with your dad? Did you eventually just tell him, hey, I'm taking a step back when I come to your house, I'm not going? Or
yeah, that was really rough. That was a weird time of life because I had a really weird relationship with my dad, so I didn't feel like I could openly talk about it, and so I didn't.
Yeah.
So it was very like avoid conflict. So I would go to church, but I would be like, I don't want to be here. Mm-hmm. So I would try to spend more time at my mom's on Sundays and find loopholes, but it never worked.
So your mom, was she raised in the church?
Yeah, super heavy in the church as well. Her mom is like, she's amazing. I love Margie's her name. I call her Gigi. But she's very heavy in the church. She's actually works at the temple.
Okay.
And I mean, I love her so much. Like the church is perfect for her.
Totally.
And that's when the topic of religion gets a little bit tricky, because I think for a lot of people, it's so helpful and it provides them with so much guidance and love and support and community. And for others, it's like a source of fear and like, I'm not doing enough. And I think that's when it gets tricky. And that's what I had felt as I was growing up. And
what were those conversations like at that time with your mom? Do you feel like she was pretty solid in what she believed, or was she like, it's okay if you're confused? I don't know. Since you guys are so close, a good opportunity to teach your kids like, hey, there's not one size fits all. I'm on my journey. Your dad's on his.
Yeah. No, she was so open. She was exactly how she was supposed to be. She was understanding of everything, but also like, hey, if you want to learn, like, I'll show you. She was never pressuring though. She was never like, oh, you can't go to church, or
because she wasn't active at that time. No, when you were born and everything.
A little bit.
Okay.
Growing up, they got divorced when I was pretty little, so it was. I don't really remember them being together, which is like best case scenario. So I had it the easy way.
Yeah.
I mean, divorce is hard either way for the kids. It's like,
yeah,
there's just different parenting methods. So it's like switching on and off between the two, which is also a blessing because I feel like I'm a lot better at adapting now.
1,000%. So when you were at your mom's, it was like, we don't really go to church on Sundays.
My mom's, we went to like K2 for a minute. I don't even know if we were talking about this. I don't know if they're around anymore.
What is that? A church?
It's like a non-denominational church that we were going to for a while. And I hated it there too. Okay. So we ended up just going our separate ways. But that's when it's so funny because my mom was doing the same thing. I was really just mirroring my mom because she was like my idol. She still is. Mm-hmm. But she was in this energetic field of learning it all about like Buddhism,
like
and
spirituality,
crystals, and and so I obviously like fell into that for a while, and I'm now in this place of believing in God. I know there's something bigger, and I know that when I feel a lack of control, understanding that somebody that also has my best interest at heart is taking the wheel has been the most easing feeling to come to terms with. Yeah. And I think that's really how our relationship stemmed.
Yeah, totally. So are you currently practicing a certain religion, or is it more just spirituality?
Yeah, I think it's just an ongoing personal relationship with God. I read the Bible. I don't know where I stand on it though. I was talking with a friend about it yesterday. I don't know its truth. I don't know.
But does it provide you comfort?
100%. The principles that are taught are ones that I need to hear and ones that I firmly believe. And so it's really helpful in that way. I think what I missed in the church, part that I didn't really get from the church, was developing a personal relationship with God. That was never something I really understood. It was more like you just go to church and you follow the Bibles and the commandments and the scriptures and don't do this, this, and this. What does prayer look like on an intimate, vulnerable level? How do you feel when dealing with sin? How are you going to present that to God? How are you going to lean on him on areas that you don't want to lean on him for? It's so interesting. Sometimes I think about my finances. That's like the one area that I've never really given to God. I'll trust him with my relationships and even my career sometimes. But when it comes to my finances, it's like, no, I need to take care of that. I need more. Mm-hmm. But it's so interesting. It's like, since when is money my idol?
Well, it's a harder thing to trust in God that I'm going to be able to pay my bills next month.
Totally.
What would that ultimately look like for you, trusting God with finances?
I think it was just not focusing on the output, which was money. If you think about it, the inputs are prioritizing my mindset. I'm going out to sell this summer in Alabama for pest control. And I'm a firm believer in, if you want to become somebody, if that's the goal, put yourself in situations where you're forced to become that person. Yeah. And for me, that was sales. I want to be someone that's disciplined and not emotionally reactive. It was honestly like all my pain points. It was the most uncomfortable job for me to go and do. But I think putting myself in that situation is an input. That's something that I can control. That's something I can show up and I can do the work. And then the finances will follow. It's like money's going to flow. I know it. I believe it.
Or him presenting opportunity. If you have that 100%. Abundance mindset of more will come.
Yep.
So I think it's super admirable. I'm no longer LDS, but I think a lot of people, once they leave the church, they leave God behind too, because it's just a hard transition. And so I see your relationship with God and you going to this church and just experimenting all these things. And I admire it so much because I'm like, I want to know that there's a place with me and God, putting all that behind, growing up the way that we did and finding a new way to stay connected to him without it feeling like a negative thing. And so do you have advice or ways to leave the LDS church behind and come into a new, or finding a new relationship with the same God?
Yeah, I couldn't relate to that more.
Yeah.
Growing up, seeing this being, I know like I can put a face to it, but then distancing and you're like, okay, you're out with it. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, well, wait, there has to be something. Like it doesn't make sense for there not to be something bigger than me. And I think the hardest part for me was battling that it's not that person. And I think for me, just like ease of mind, I still view God as that person. I don't know if that's what it is. And I think that's okay, because I know that God is real and I know that our personal relationship is real. And I know that there's so much vulnerability that's tied into our relationship, but it really is just eliminating everything that you thought you knew and starting from scratch. Like, what does prayer feel like to you? How do you feel when you give this to God?
Yeah.
Me and Sammy were having this conversation. She called me and she's like, do you feel like God's a legit dude? Or like, what do you think it is?
No, seriously.
And I was like, I don't know. It's so hard because I'm at a place where I'm so comfortable with the unknown.
Yeah.
And growing up in the church, unknown is like a no, scary. No, we know everything.
Do you know who Joe Dispenza is?
No. Okay. Who's that?
He's this meditative guy. He's really cool. I've been studying his work a lot.
Okay. Is he religious or?
He's more scientific, but he teaches the practice of there's so many potentials out there and you can attract whatever potential you want when you're in the quantum field. So he's teaching the science behind it along with meditations and how to attract it and whatever. But I really struggled with it because it's a level of how much am I involving God in this future that I want? And that's been really hard for me. And I think it's this vulnerability. And like you said, I don't know, but I don't think it matters. And tapping into that and just being like, okay, what happens is going to happen. I'm going to give this a shot, and it might transform my relationship with God. It might not, but I think staying firm in my values.
Yeah, that's where I've had to deconstruct everything and focus on what are my highest values.
Yeah.
And also being a mother of 3, I'm like, I need to guide these babies.
Totally.
And growing up in the church, it's so cozy because you already have built-in values and guidelines. But now I'm pulling back and I deconstructed everything to the ground level. What matters the most to me, I'm going to live up to those values every day. And it is pointing me into my true north. And now my relationship with God, a higher power, whatever it is, that's what I'm trying to add now back into my life. But it's hard because it goes back to what you were saying about the body check, where it's like, how does that make me feel growing up in the church if I really sit in those meetings or young women's or sacrament meeting or whatever it is? How is my body feeling right now? Sometimes if I was feeling uncomfortable or unsafe or anxious, I would ignore that. And now adding spirituality back into my life, does traditional prayer bring me comfort? And if it does, that's amazing. Or does talking out loud in my car, whoever it is, too, does that bring me joy and peace? But I think when you're describing your relationship with God, what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, it's even more your relationship with yourself is so solid. And even having some type of reflection, mirror, God, whatever it is, looking back, where it's like, I'm seeing myself through God's eyes, which is like my true potential, all this love. It's almost like you're just developing that love for yourself within that. And you're kind of transcending that to really becoming a higher self.
Totally. I think that our self-concept is, one, not something that's taught, but it's also so cool because it's something we can control, but it is the basis of how we present ourselves. And if you have a negative self-concept, if you're speaking to yourself with hatred, discouragement, and disappointment, and all these negative things, that's how you're going to present yourself and honestly what you're going to attract. So I think viewing it from a place of God, perspective I've always loved is God presents me challenges and how I respond determines how big my reward will be. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. I've noticed a pattern in that, so I believe that to be true. But I think when push comes to shove, it really just helps me practice discernment. How does God want me to show up right now? And how can I act that way knowing that my motive is what I'm going to get at the end? And sometimes it's just another perspective. Sometimes that's what I needed to learn. Maybe that's my reward. I don't know. But either way, I believe that that reward is what God needs me to have.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. How have your relationships been with your friends, dating, growing up in Utah and having it be so predominantly Mormon with your spirituality?
Yeah, that's been really tricky. I think I'm so lucky in that I learned how to be alone, how to truly be alone, and how much fun it can be. Truly learning how to love who you are. And obviously I go through phases where I'm like, dude, these voices are so loud. I need them to not be there. And then it's like, okay, what do I do then? And for me, it's been cold plunging. That'll shut me up real quick. And so I believe that the quicker you are to understand yourself and your faults, the easier challenges are because you know how you're going to respond. You know, yeah, I can be highly emotional sometimes and I can be reactive sometimes. But what can I do with that? How can I work with it instead of clashing with it all of the time? That's exhausting. So finding that ground of this is just who I am, but also working with it to make it better, I think is a really fun experiment.
Yeah. So the dating scene, you're young, so you have plenty of time to date, but like, how has that been?
Has it been hard for you, just you being so mature and gaining a lot of these lessons? You just turned 20, and I feel like a lot of people learn everything you've learned in their 20s, like how to be alone, how to not be codependent, how to get out of the party phase and find yourself and do things that matter. And like in some of the videos you posted, go alone, be alone, quiet out the noise. Is it hard to find people that you can connect to on such a deep level?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I've had a lack of that in the past. I think there's so much love in human connection, but it's so tricky to get when, you know, I'm a big, like, go, go, go. I like to be productive. And it's hard when we live in a society that, at my age, it's like, oh, I'm going to go to Japan for a week. It's like, what? Is there money there? Like, why are you going? Not to say that that's, like, higher or lower. I'm not comparing myself. I think they're just different lifestyles. And so it's tricky to find people that have the passion and the drive and the commitment that I do. But I also think that it makes the conversations that I do have that do itch that for me so much more meaningful. like I said, setting the bar for joy so low. But yeah, dating's definitely hard. In Utah alone, it's like I know girls that aren't active in the church and they're like, how do I do this? But I guess.
So are guys wanting just that LDS girl? Is that the vibe you're getting? Or
I think they just want to follow the trend of we get married, we have kids, we settle down. And I think that's a great life. I think most people want that. That's just not what I want. I'm very much like, I'm going to do some epic stuff in my life.
Yeah, you're focused on career.
Yeah. And just impact. I would love to be confident in walking away from conversations and being like, I believe that I learned a lot from that person and they learned a lot from me, and viewing it like that in all of my conversations. So I think having the access to social media that I was given at such a young age and the platform that I do and the story that I have, I can't not do something with it.
Yeah. So what's your relationship like with social media? You said you were going to go sell, but is social media a form of income, a job?
Yeah. Social media is so interesting because it is a distraction, but it's also something that has really taught me how to have control. It's like, okay, I'm noticing right now I'm getting very emotionally involved with this video of this 70-year-old woman crying because her husband just died. Like, I need to not do that. And so I can turn it off. Mm-hmm. And finding ways to create a balance. Like, I just got this little, it's called a brick. Do you know what it is? Have you seen the ads for it? I'm such a sucker for the ads sometimes.
Oh my gosh, the freaking swipe ups.
And it's like a tangible object thing that you click. It's like an Apple Pay. Like, you touch it and it blocks all your apps.
Oh
my gosh, wait, I'm obsessed with this.
Yeah. And if you don't have it, you can't unblock it. So it's like, okay, let's use that
downstairs, swipe it, go upstairs, go to bed.
You can put on your fridge. So it's like, in order for me to go and then undo it, I have to be home and tap it right there. Mm-hmm. So that's been helpful for me. But I mean, there's always like, it's just addicting.
So having a boundary of keeping it as a tool maybe for you to use to elevate yourself or to help your career or tell your story. But then the user side, you're so trying to eliminate.
I think it's tricky sometimes in telling my story because I'm not one that likes to live in the past. I'm not one that wants to keep revisiting it. And honestly, sometimes looking at the videos to go and post, I'm like, this is hard.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to look at this video anymore. Mm-hmm. But I know that those videos do well and that a lot of people gain perspective from it. And I was at the well, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, the church I go to. And he was like, God will present you challenges. And sometimes it's not for you, but for others to learn from you. And I think that's a huge reason of why the accident happened.
Yeah.
Like I was telling you earlier, but just using that as much as I can to reach more people and just be like, your limits aren't real. It's your mindset. It's the limits that you're inflicting on yourself.
Yeah.
And that's fine. If you want to put more limits on your life, if you want to live the life that you're living, by all means, but also know your limits aren't real.
Yeah.
Do you run into any challenges with being so public about your life or having a public platform? Do you ever be like, oh, I don't want to share this, or I hate that I'm known for this, or?
Yeah, I don't. Sometimes it's tricky. I mean, everyone gets hate comments. Mm-hmm. I think I've developed a really good relationship with them now where I know that their hate is stemmed from like almost just being like they're just jealous.
Yeah.
Whether they are or not, I don't care. Mm-hmm. But having that perspective, it helps. So I'm going to keep having that perspective.
Yeah.
Obviously, sometimes like, at the gym, people will be like, oh, I saw your stuff on social media. But it's never like, oh, can I get a picture with you? Which is great. I'm not.
It's like the perfect level of maybe someone it recognizes me and I'm making an impact, but it's not like, Brielle.
Yeah, which is great. And I would love to keep it that way. But I want to be a lesson. I want people to learn with me. I think there's so much value in navigating life with somebody else. And that's a big part of why I'm going out this summer. I do intend to keep documenting what I'm doing in ways that I prioritize my health for working 10 hours a day. Because right now it's easy to show like, yeah, I prioritize my health because I get paid to do it. Okay, what about mom of 3, you know? That's hard. It's a different dynamic.
Yeah.
So finding ways to work with it and be like, okay, this is how you can do it. This is how I'm doing it. Let's go and let's navigate this together.
Yeah, you had mentioned earlier there's seasons of life. What do you feel like the season of life you're in right now?
That's a good question. Yeah, just mindset. I think when you begin to craft your own thoughts and learn how to only give the good ones attention, oh man, I feel like you're unstoppable. Like that's when you just reach a new level. You can do anything. And navigating that with God, I think gives me so much gratitude and also an advantage of I know I can do this. But it's hard. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I haven't talked about online, which I really want to. I don't know how to sometimes. I don't know if I like how to like, hey guys, just got diagnosed with all this stuff. But I want to keep it real because there's a part that nobody sees, you know? And so navigating ADHD and OCD and then a severe traumatic brain injury and scoliosis and, you know, relationship problems and abusive relationships. And there's stuff that no one sees. And I think finding ways to accomplish what I know I can accomplish in spite of all of those things, it's insane.
Do you feel like there's a subject that you're feeling like you want to be more open about on social media?
Yeah, I think it's just my intensity. I like to go hard and I like to go full steam ahead. And that mindset's always served me well. Like right now, I usually have 3 people that I'm studying at a time. So I like to study people in their past and watch their documentaries and listen to their podcasts. And right now it's Joe Dispenza, that meditative guy that I was telling you about, Kobe Bryant, and then Mike Tyson's trainer, I'm going to butcher this name, Customodo.
Okay.
And they're all pretty heavy on mindset. They're all pretty heavy on like, you frame your own life. The trainer, Customodo, his whole saying for Mike Tyson was, who's the boxer, was, you don't exist, just the task. Go execute. And so obviously that's like, well, hold up. I obviously do exist. Like, let's chill out. But the concept of responding in spite of, again, like I always come back to that. How can I maintain my discipline regardless of my cycle, regardless of my mood, regardless of who I'm surrounded by? And that's something I've always struggled with. I'm very sensitive to who I spend my time with and like the weather. If I wake up and I'm sad, I'm like, it's gonna rain, and then it rains. Like I'm very emotional in that way. And again, coming back to why I'm doing sales, I think intentionally putting yourself in places where you are forced to become who you want to become is one of the best decisions you can make for yourself.
So how do you keep the balance and how do you avoid burnout? Because I feel like when you get on these self-help trajectories, you seem like you're all in all the time. What do you do for fun, or where do you fall short? Or how do you make it attainable?
Yeah. I definitely disagree with the term balance. You know, everybody's like 80-20. And for me personally, it has just been like that 20%. Are you familiar with like 80-20 and like eat healthy 80% of the time and then not 20? Yeah. And I think this is just where my OCD comes in, and like, you're not enough and it's not perfect. Learning to work with it and just be like, okay, if that's the case, I am allowed to have a date, like one of the fruit things. And that's my source of joy. Like setting it so low. And when you have goals like I have, everybody has big goals, but you have to expect the effort and you can't complain when it gets hard, because that was the intent. It's supposed to be hard. The harder it gets, the cooler it is, because less amount of people are going to follow you. And, you know, I'm a very competitive person. So having that perspective of like, oh, this is hard, that's good, nobody's following me, has really propelled me to be like, okay.
Keeps you going, looking behind. There's no one behind me.
Like nobody's here. You know?
Yeah, and good to shed that light on that, because me realizing, I look at you and I'm like, how does she do it? Because you seem very vigorous with your practice, but you've got this tight schedule because you have big goals. And I feel like your drive towards those big goals is what brings the joy, is what brings what people would say a break or balance or whatever. You don't need that when you have bigger and better things and you're on this fast track to those things.
Totally. And I mean, obviously, like sometimes I'll watch a show. I'm on
some days. Like, once a month I get to watch one show.
I just mean like there's, you know.
Yeah.
I think we all set our own bar. The lower you set your expectation bar, the higher you can set your trajectory goal.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something I firmly believe. And so if I expect less from, you know, my emotions in terms of like, oh, I need to except for coffee. I will say I do have to have a coffee every day. I'm dependent on coffee. Other than that, I'll do it.
You can have your coffee.
I can have
I'm
my
allowing
coffee. That
you.
is one thing I have decided. I will never bash on myself for needing a coffee.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't blame you. That's the best part of my day too. Yeah.
Shout out.
I love it. And that's probably everything wrong with my mentality and majority of people's mentality is we look at your lifestyle and we're like, that seems so hard. And it is hard and it does require discipline, but it's like also not that hard.
Yeah.
You're probably just like, no guys.
Well,
like,
I also
if
have
you
more
actually-
time.
Yeah.
Like everybody has, I mean, you know, a lot of my following is people from The Bachelor. And they're these moms that are also working or not. Being a mom is so intense. And it's like, please do not compare yourself to me. I am in my 20s. I have this fully functioning body that like, I mean, obviously I have my problems, but who doesn't? I don't have a job. I make money online. Like it's not the same.
Yeah, totally. Because even listening to you talk, I'm so motivated right now. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to like go. And then I'm like, oh yeah. I feel my theme right now is really embracing motherhood and embracing that,
which is magical.
Yes, and it's so beautiful, but you relinquish some of your autonomy a little bit, but even within this, finding space for myself, like with this podcast or developing that muscle of like learning and growing, because that was such a passion of mine in my early 20s. Personal development was huge, you know, but I feel like that propelled me to where I'm at now, being okay with that relationship with motherhood right now.
Totally. I think acknowledging your theme and knowing that certain areas of your life are also just going to fall short and being okay with it. I had mentioned work. And honestly, it's been really hard because I was pretty heavy on my endurance training before this. It's a stab in the back sometimes to be like, I'm not running or I'm not biking or going to the gym as much or whatever. But similar to you, you just have to be okay with it and know that that's just not the season right now.
Yeah, exactly. And then being okay with it'll eventually come that abundance mentality of like, this doesn't have to always be like this. So I'm going to enjoy this season.
But I think as you have those seasons, you can take pieces of those seasons into your next. Now that you've developed this independence and this discipline and all those things, you can take those into the other seasons and still instill those habits, which is cool.
Yeah, which I think is what helps me for my non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Like I always learn something from my seasons. One was, you know, like I had said, my endurance training. And my lesson was that limits aren't real. That's been a very transformative perspective for me. So I'm taking that with me for this sales gig. I am dreaming bigger. People laugh at my goals. And to me, it's just like, watch.
Yeah. Well, and I'm excited to see, you mentioned that you're going to keep including that in your social media of watch my life change and watch me still instill these goals and still prioritize health while pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. Yeah. It's going to be cool to see what you do with your life and how you keep these things intact.
Yeah, I'm excited. I hope to really help a lot of people. That's the goal.
There's this book called Relentless. And
so good.
Oh, you read it? So my whole mantra in my early 20s was I am relentless for the things I want in my life. Because relentless has such a negative connotation, but I will again and again show up for what I want and go so hard. And then you look at your life and you're like, oh, whoa, I have what I want. Yeah. And then you can have more goals and push yourself. When are you leaving to go sell?
April 4th.
How are you feeling?
I'm very nervous, but it's good. Like I said, this is going to be the most uncomfortable 5 months of my whole life.
Are you knocking?
Yeah.
All the boys are going to have crushes on you. They're going to be like, oh, I told them,
no, none.
You're like,
I'm so dialed.
This is not
Don't
my
even
season.
look at me. I'm here for the becoming. Life's cool when you look at it like that. If you can view it as a never-ending experiment of how far you can go. One of the founders of The Grit, the place I'm selling, he said, finding ways to shorten the gap between your performance and your potential. I just was like, dude, that's life. Find it. For a lot of people, it's being a mother. And I think that's like your performance. But it's like, okay, how do you want to present for your kids? What do you want your kids to walk away from you? How do you want them to speak behind your back? How do you want them to grow up? Mm-hmm. There's so much love in being a mother, but it's a lot of hard work, my understanding. I cannot imagine raising me. That would be so rough.
Yeah. With sales, that's my background is in sales. And it's hard because I have a little bit of an uncomfortable relationship with it because it can become very slimy and money, and it can switch into an unhealthy track. At least it did for me.
Totally.
But also the lessons that you learn, and just there's so much motivation and willpower there, where it's like you're only going to make what you put in the effort to make, is a lesson for life that I've learned, where it's like, if I want to be the best, then I have to work the hardest.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there's a gap in the market for women in sales. I believe that the foundation of sales is mindset. It's how you carry yourself. It's what you believe in yourself. It's your self-concept. And when you look at it that way, your goals will always be attainable. So I think the goal with this is obviously to go and kill it.
You will.
And then, to show people this is who I became. Put the paycheck aside. That's really not why I'm doing it. Like, I'm good. I make money online. Honestly, I could chill out for the rest of my life and be fine. But I don't want that. There's this level of, I know I can do more. And I know that other women feel like this. I know that other women are like, my friend group is who's holding me back right now. And I want to be around people that believe in me more than I believe in myself.
What do you mean by that? Your friend group? They're just more stuck in that, like, let's chill, let's hang out.
Totally. It's like guy culture now. It's like you're out with your friends and you're like, oh, that guy's hot, that guy's hot, that guy's hot. And it's like, well, yeah, but what are they doing with their life?
Yeah.
What am I doing with my life? Am I in a position to provide for that guy as strong and loving as a woman as I know I can be? And I think that's a big part of sales. You learn to really dive deep into femininity. And that might be a controversial take, but I think it's just because it's been led by men.
Yeah, there might be a gap in the market. Women can really crush it.
Oh, they kill it.
And you're so cute and can talk to anyone. And if you find that and the right company, because for me, sometimes it was like what I was selling.
Who are you selling with?
I worked with women entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And so I was selling for this amazing woman, but I was looking at her life and she's this boss and amazing and so cool. But I just didn't really admire her lifestyle. It's not what I want to prioritize, but she was so successful and so amazing and so motivational. But then at the end of the night, it was nannies are raising her kids and never had dinner with her family. I know you're filling your cup and your life is exactly how you want it to be, but I don't want my life to look like that.
Totally. You are who you follow.
Yeah. And then I was like, I need to put this on the back burner a little bit, and then I focus more on having my kids and stuff, and so I'm in that. But I did get a lot of self-confidence and joy, and I felt so capable.
Totally. Going back to your manager, there's this, I don't even know how I came up with this could totally be something online, but I create my own board of directors. So there's certain areas of life that I'm looking to fine tune. And I'll find one person for each area that I look up to just in that field. And that's where I'll go to for that specific advice. Instead of, like, for that woman example, you would look up to her in sales. She was probably an amazing saleswoman, but not as much for family and the way that she navigated her family life. So I think finding the line for me, like mentality, I always go hard. I love David Goggins. How can I tap into that mindset? But I don't as much look up to him in the way that he navigates his relationships. So finding the balance, like I just said, I hate it.
Well, there's this girl, we're releasing her episode soon, and she hates the word balance, and she had this term of harmony, like living with a harmony, and I've been thinking about that so much lately. Like, things can live in harmony.
Yeah, there's seasons.
Yes. Who do you feel like you would go to ultimately for a hard day?
I mean, God. But if I feel like I'm really struggling, it just depends on what I'm struggling with. If it's with relationships, I have it all written down on my phone. It's my grandma. I love the way that she navigates her relationships. She always says, whenever you're in a decision point, she's like, go towards the people. And I love that.
And you know what I love about this board of directors is you're looking for someone to be everything. Like, you want your best friend to be everything, your husband, your partner, whoever it is. And no one can be everything.
No.
And so if you have this board of directors, it takes the pressure off of certain relationships and helps you grow in those strengths with your grandma. Having that, okay, I'm going to go to you with the relationships and we can really just discuss and hash this out. But someone for business or motherhood, like your mom or whatever it is, then I feel like you can really grow those relationships in the way that they are meant to.
Totally.
But it's hard with a partner because my husband, I'm like, you have to be my therapist, you have to be my best friend, you have to be everything.
Yep.
So I know you talk a lot about your goals and the dreams that you have for your life, but where do you see yourself in 10 years? What are some of those beyond sales, beyond getting through some of these diagnoses? Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Oh man, maybe not 10, but a little past. I want to be a mom. I'm a big believer in your why, and like, why are you doing what you're doing? Is it deep enough? Because I believe that if you have a deep enough why, you can accomplish anything. And I firmly believe that. So finding ways to make my future my why has been really helpful in hitting the goals that I have. Obviously, just to be a supportive wife. I think I've experienced what it feels like to have somebody believe in something bigger than you, in you, and for you. And it feels so good because you don't feel stupid in dreaming big. And I want to be that for everyone. I want women from all over to come up to me and just be like, Brielle, I've been thinking about starting my own business. And it's like, let's do it. Like, how are you going to do it? But I believe you can. And I think everybody wants somebody that believes in them. And I believe that I have the power to really source the good and to be somebody that can help somebody hit their goals. So that's the goal.
Well, you don't need to wait 10 years. You're already doing that.
Thank you.
You're amazing. I'm so grateful for you coming on. I'm obsessed with your perspective. You've been through so much, but you are just out here killing it. And you're going to do amazing things.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on. This was amazing.
Yes. Oh, and we'll link all of your socials and everything so everyone can follow you. Check out Brielle.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Thanks.
Bye,
guys.
Bye. That was great.